at MMA. So today's recipe is going to be a quinoa burrito bowl, which is a fan favorite. This recipe is really great. It doesn't take a lot of time, usually about 30-ish minutes, and it's very versatile too. So, you can cater it to however you want, mix and match different ingredients, use whatever you have on hand, or, if you prefer something, or, your kids enjoy eating something else. We'll talk through all ways you can kind of incorporate that and make everyone happy with this recipe. So with that, you need a couple of things to get started. So we are using quinoa today. Go ahead and get that prepped because it takes a little bit longer to cook. But if you don't have quinoa, that's totally fine. You can use farro, rice, whatever you have on hand. We also have some chicken. I am using chicken breast today. It's already pre-seasoned. But if you have plain chicken, it's totally fine, or whatever protein you're using, that's cool too. We are going to need a can of corn and a can of black beans. I also have some cherry tomatoes here today. We have an avocado, some cilantro, and then we are going to make a dressing and a sauce for this burrito bowl as well. So you'll need some olive oil, some lime juice as well from limes. I have a couple of garlic cloves here ready to go. We're going to pop that in our sauce as well. And then I'm using Greek yogurt today, 2%. And then last but not least with our sauce, I'm using a jalapeno because I enjoy my meals a little bit on the spicier side, but this is totally optional, and you can certainly omit this if you don't want to. Okay, so first things first, like I said, go ahead and start working on your grain. Just for the brevity of this demonstration, I went ahead and cooked mine ahead of time. So, like I said, I'm using quinoa today, but you can really use any grain that you like, whether that's white rice, brown rice, farro, quinoa, totally up to you. We are using quinoa today because it's a whole grain, meaning that every part of the seed is intact. So that's the germ, the bran, the endosperm, it all is in there. And what makes a whole grain has all that intact, and it's not stripped of its nutrients. For example, like white rice is white because they remove all the added goodness to those grains. So if we're using whole grains like brown rice, quinoa, for example, you're getting all those benefits. Most importantly, fiber. So fiber is found in those whole grains, like I mentioned. Really great for our heart health. Helps with weight maintenance because fiber helps keeps us full. And it's also really great for our gut because it helps defeat that gut bacteria that's living inside of us. So, any grain you want to use, totally fine. Another added benefit of quinoa too, with the fiber, you're also getting some protein with the quinoa too. So if I have any vegans out there, any vegetarians, and you want to omit the meat, or maybe you're looking for a more plant-based dish, know that you are getting protein from your quinoa. Okay, so go ahead and get that started. And then next, I'm going to start cooking my chicken. And I should also introduce the supplies we'll need. So for the chicken, you will need a pan. I went ahead and put some olive oil on there. I didn't measure my olive oil. I just kind of eyeballed it to make sure the whole pan was covered. I'm going to need some tongs to maneuver the chicken. I have a blender here, which we'll be using for our sauce. I have a measuring cup and some measuring spoons as well. I have 2 forks because later on we're going to be shredding chicken. I have a little paring knife, which I'm going to use to handle the avocado. You'll need a colander, a can opener, some bowls, a cutting board, and a knife as well. Okay, so with that, we're going to start with the chicken. And I have my pan here, like I just mentioned. Show you. Just making sure the pan is nice and covered with our olive oil. Now I'm going to turn this on to medium to low heat. So I wanted the chicken to cook nicely. We're doing kind of a lower heat to get that crispy outside, but we also want to make sure, the inside's well cooked without burning the outside. So I'm just going to go ahead and place my chicken on my pan here. Go ahead, if you got your quinoa started, go ahead and start preparing your protein as well. All right. Okay, so that's good to go. I'm just going to set my tongs aside because I'll need them a little bit later. And then we're going to set a timer. You can do this on your oven, your microwave, your phone, your watch as well. I'm going to set it for about 4 minutes. Then we're going to come back to it and see how it's cooking.
Maddie, I have a nutrition question for you.
All right.
Could you explain the difference between white rice, brown rice, and wild rice?
Yeah, so wild rice, brown rice, they're a little bit different in color, and that's why we call it brown rice versus white rice. It's good. It's brown rice, like I mentioned, the whole seed is still intact. So it has the germ, the endosperm, and the bran. So that's why it's still brown, because it has all those components of the seed in place and intact. And it has those nutrients in there too. So whole grains contain fiber, it contains vitamins, minerals, has iron in there, which is a great mineral that some of us might not get enough of. Whereas, for example, white rice, it's white because it's stripped of all those nutrients and those parts of the seed. So that's the difference between brown rice and white rice there. If you have white rice, that's totally fine. You're still going to get lots of other nutrients and fiber from the other ingredients we're using today. But when we can, we want to try to opt for whole grains like that brown rice, whole wheat tortillas, quinoa, things like that, to get more nutritional bang for your buck, if you will, in your meal.
Yeah. Yeah, and wild rice also is considered a whole grain as well. It has tons of fiber and lots of protein in it. So if you have wild rice on hand, that is also a great source.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so go ahead and start working on your canned goods. I'm just a little bit. So you'll need a can opener, and I always rinse my canned goods before I eat them, because that solution that our canned goods are preserved in is filled with a lot of sodium. So to remove that extra sodium, we're going to make sure we're giving our black beans and our corn or whatever canned good you're using today a really good rinse. And this is a good task for a child if you are cooking with the kiddos at home. You might need to handle the can opener for them, but having them dump your canned goods into a colander, having them get in there and kind of mix it around, making sure it's well rinsed out and clean, that is a good task for them. And using canned goods is also great for meal prepping as well. It's quick, it's easy, it takes minimal time to prepare. Really all we're doing here is just opening it up with a can opener, giving it a rinse, and then boom, it's good to go. And I do want to mention too, sometimes canned goods get a bad rep, but they're perfectly fine for us. They're very, very nutritious. They're picked at their peak ripeness. So, that's when they're at their most nutritious. They're picked, they're preserved, and then they're ready for us to utilize at a different time. So having lots of canned goods on hand is really going to save you a lot of time in the kitchen and help move that meal prep process go a little bit quicker and a little bit smoother when you're cooking at home. So like I said, we're using black beans, we're using corn. These are all great ways to add in extra fiber and protein to your meal. The corn contains fiber, the beans contain protein and fiber. So always great to add those things in. Canned goods, like I said, they're still nutritious for us. We also want to look for that low sodium or reduced sodium labeling, in addition to giving it a good rinse, because that means there's going to be less salt in that solution. It's just really great to have on hand too. They're shelf-stable. Canned goods are usually very affordable. And it's just great to have on hand if you have extra grains or protein lying around at the end of the week. You can just grab a canned vegetable, pop it in, make a quick meal, get those get that extra fiber in there.
Maddie, can you also use frozen corn instead of canned?
Yes, absolutely. Frozen goods, frozen produce is great. Can definitely utilize that. They're still just as nutritious for us because similar to the canned vegetables and canned fruit, our frozen produce is picked at peak ripeness, so good to go. It's all preserved nice and well for you. Just follow the instructions on the package and they will be good to go. I personally really dislike cutting up broccoli, so I always opt for frozen broccoli florets. For some reason, I can't do it. It drives me nuts cutting broccoli, so I always opt for using those broccoli florets to use in those meals. It's quick, it's easy. Just warm it up, pop it into whatever I'm making for the week. Just be careful though, there's a caveat with frozen vegetables and frozen fruits and things too. Sometimes they're preserved in a sauce or they have a little added extra sugar. So if we are opting for frozen vegetables, that's great. Just be mindful if it comes in a sauce, you might be getting a little extra sodium in there that you may not necessarily want. Okay, so my timer went off for my chicken, so I'm going to take a look at that and maybe flip it as well. We're going to see how it's looking. Okay, so this looks pretty good. I'll bring it a little closer. It's nice and brown, starting to cook pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and flip my pieces of chicken. If yours is looking great too, go ahead and flip your chicken with me. And then I'm going to reset my timer for another 4-ish minutes. And then we're going to take a look, see if it's nice and cooked. All right, so next up, I am using some cherry tomatoes today. So if you have cherry tomatoes, great. You can, pop them in, eat them as whole. Today I'm going to cut mine in half-sized pieces. You don't have to use cherry tomatoes either. You can use whatever tomato you have on hand. You can even use canned tomatoes too. Canned tomatoes are great. Again, it's going to save you some time in your meal prepping. And our canned tomato goods also contain a nutrient called lycopene. So lycopene is an antioxidant. It's found in a lot of those tomato-based canned products, like tomato sauce, diced tomatoes, pizza sauce. So, if you're opting for those canned tomatoes, saving you some time and you're getting that extra lycopene. All right. So also, I'm cutting my tomatoes, and if you're cooking with kids and they're watching you, I like to say, use a bear claw to teach them that. So if you're using a bear claw to cut, you can still get a good grip on, your produce that you're chopping. But, you're teaching them a nice safety skill, right? So instead of chopping like this, where we're more apt to, more prone to get an injury, we're using that bear claw to protect our fingers, protect, our kiddos if they're chopping along with us.
Yeah, so while Maddie is chopping up her cherry tomatoes, I'll start and open the conversation for meal planning and why and how we can start meal planning in the new year. So one of the techniques when it comes to meal planning is cook once, eat twice. So for an example with this recipe is cooking extra quinoa or cooking extra chicken to then use later for the week for lunches, for dinners. A lot and most leftovers can last up to 3 to 4 days safely. So always keeping that in mind, food safety should always come first when it comes to cooking in the kitchen. But if you're not a big fan of leftovers like me, I know I could eat the same thing for a whole week and not get bored of it. So I could always have this quinoa burrito bowl each day for lunch and not have to stress out about it. But you can also repurpose those ingredients. So let's say we're cooking a batch of brown rice or wild rice. We're going to double that batch and use it for different recipes, whether it's for tacos the next day or as a side dish to, salmon or, added to soups. If you're doing pastas, making spaghetti one day, then utilizing the, whole grain pasta for pasta salad, or then adding it to chicken noodle soup. Proteins are really versatile this way because they can be added to anything. And a lot of times when cooking protein, it's not my favorite thing to cook because it takes a lot of time and effort. So I like to cook a lot of protein, whether it's chicken, I do a lot of fish or beans, things like that. You can cook it in a batch and then eat throughout the week, adding it to salads for lunch, adding it to them as a part of your dinner, adding it to sandwiches. So when we're thinking about meal prepping and planning, we're trying to make it affordable and also time friendly. So when we cook in batch, we're doing it all at once. So we're not having to cook throughout the day or throughout the week. And we're utilizing those ingredients more than once.
Absolutely. And if you, make too much and you have quite a bit left over, definitely feel free to throw it in the freezer. Yep. Freeze it have on hand. Especially too, if I know that I'm traveling for a week or a weekend and I anticipate that like a month in advance, I usually cook some things like soups and casseroles ahead of time. Just spend like an extra hour or two on a Sunday to get that done. So when I come back from traveling, you just pop it out of the freezer. It's ready to go for me, and I have a healthy homemade meal already planned and good to go for the rest of the week. Another thing too, if you're new to meal prepping, keep it simple. You can always just try to do 1 to 2 recipes at once, or if you want to plan your week out altogether, maybe do a 2-day system. So we cook a lot on Sunday. That gets us to that Wednesday mark midweek. Then we can go back to the grocery store, plan the next set of meals, kind of get us through till Sunday. So, okay, my timer's going off, so I'm gonna go ahead and check my chicken again. If you're cooking with me, just go ahead and take a peek at it. We don't want it to burn. So this piece looks pretty brown and nicely cooked. I am just going to take a knife and cut into it. I feel like it's probably done, but I just want to make sure I'm avoiding any food safety issues before I eat it. So this piece is a little thinner. I think it's going to be good to go. Yeah, so it's nice and white inside. If you're new to cooking chicken, you just want to make sure that there's no pink in the middle of your chicken there. And this is a little bit thicker piece, so I'm going to cut into it as well really quick. Okay. So this is still a little pink. I'll show you what mine looks like. Let me get a good grip. So mine's still slightly pink. I'm just going to leave it on for maybe another minute. It's up to you. If your protein's good to go, definitely go ahead and take that off. I'm just going to reset my timer here, and it should be fine in about 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, so I chopped all my tomatoes. They're in a small bowl here, and I'm going to set that aside and clear off some room for my workstation here. Next up, we have our avocado. Okay, so I'm going to use this smaller paring knife because it's just a little bit easier for me to maneuver than this larger cooking knife, right? So if you have a smaller knife at home, I definitely suggest using that to maneuver your avocado around rather than a larger knife. So again, I'm going to use that bear claw technique and get a good grip on my avocado. And I'm just going to cut in the center and kind of move it around here. You can see. And then it opens up quite nicely. So removing the pit is always kind of a messy situation, right? I'm certainly guilty of this, but I don't want to do it anymore because I don't want to hurt myself. But, some of us, myself included, sometimes stab the pit to try to yank it out and remove it. But we're going to try not to do that today. So I'm just going to use my hands. I got lucky and this the pit popped out quite nicely. But if you have kids at home, definitely have them do the dirty work for you. Have them get that avocado out. And just real quick, my chicken is good to go. I don't want it to burn, so I'm removing it and just setting it back on my plate there. Okay. Alrighty. So our chicken's good to go. It's resting over there. Back to our avocado. So what I like to do to cut the avocado and kind of protect my hand too is we can either, get a good grip in it like this, or we can kind of hold it and very carefully cut horizontally, and then we can cut vertically. So then when we remove the skin, it pops out in these nice little chunks here. Okay. You certainly don't have to do chunks. You can do, slices of avocado if you prefer. Totally fine. Whatever you want to do. Again, this is completely up to your preferences and what you and your family like to eat. And we love yes.
Do you have any good tips for storing avocados?
I like to put mine in the refrigerator. And, maybe if I'm using a half of an avocado and saving the other half, I like to sprinkle a little bit of lemon juice or lime juice on it because the citrus from the limes, the lemons, that vitamin C is going to help preserve the avocado from browning. That's a good tip too. If you have apples as well, spritzing them with some lemon or lime juice might make it a little bit sour, but you can always rinse that off later on. But it is going to help preserve the quality of the fruit. It's going to prevent that browning and that oxidation process.
Yeah. Usually when I'm using avocado, I'll use the side that doesn't contain the pit first. If I'm doing like a half an avocado for avocado toast or mashing it up for avocado or for guacamole, because maintaining the pit also maintains that color. So that's a great tip. Thanks, Maddie.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I went ahead and just put my avocado within my tomatoes. You certainly don't have to do this. If you and your family, you can set this recipe up as a burrito bowl style and kind of keep your ingredients separate. But I know everyone here at my apartment is going to love all these ingredients. I'm just going to go ahead and add everything together. But, we love cooking with tomatoes and avocados as well when we can. Tomatoes are a good source of that lycopene, like I mentioned earlier, which is that antioxidant. But it also contains potassium as well. So potassium is really great for us. It helps with nerve function. It helps our heartbeat properly, and it also helps to negate the effects of sodium as well. So it supports normal blood pressure. Kind of works opposite effect of what sodium does. Sodium will raise our blood pressure, while that potassium will come in kind of reduce that effect. So avocados also contain a little bit of potassium as well, but they're also a really good source of fiber. Vitamin C, vitamin E. It's just really great for us, yeah. And it also contains a healthy fat called monounsaturated fat. So we have saturated fat and we have monounsaturated fat when we're thinking of our fats. We do need fats. They're very essential for us. It helps promote the absorption of some of the vitamins, specifically A, D, E, and K. Helps insulate our cells, helps with hormone production. So we do need some fats in our lives, but we want to opt for the monounsaturated fat. So that's going to be found in things like our avocado. It's going to be in our vegetable oils as well, like avocado oil, walnut oil, olive oil, all great sources of that monounsaturated fat. Whereas that saturated fat, we want to be a little bit more mindful of. So there's some room for saturated fat. However, if we eat it in excess, it can raise our cholesterol levels, which then, in return can raise our risk for heart disease. So saturated fat, we're thinking solid. So anything that's solid at room temperature is that saturated fat. So like butter, coconut oil, palm oil, it can be found in, our meats as well. So again, we don't want to completely eliminate all saturated fat out of our lives, especially, that meat, because meat's a good source of protein and iron. But we just want to be mindful of how much saturated fat we're going to be eating in a day, and trying to swap out for sources of the monounsaturated fat when we can. Okay, so my quinoa is good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in this large bowl here. If you're cooking along, you can go ahead and, dump your ingredients all together in one large bowl, or, separate it, put it in separate containers. If you're meal prepping this for the week, putting all of your ingredients in separate containers is going to help everything stay a little bit fresher for longer. And it's kind of fun too, if you put it in separate containers, you can set it up like a buffet or like, a system that Chipotle does. Everyone can kind of pick and choose what they want to put in their own burrito bowl, especially if we have like picky eaters at home. It gives them lots of options, and they're not restricted to just a few, ingredients. They might not eat the whole thing. They can really customize it to however they want. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and dump my tomatoes in here and my avocados as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my corn and my black beans in this large bowl as well. Again, if you want to separate it out, totally fine. But if you're mixing it all together like me, go ahead, put it together and just give it a good mix. Make sure all the ingredients are nicely incorporated in here. So each bite that we take is going to be, include those beans, avocados, tomatoes. Make sure it's nice and mixed.
Yeah, and Maddie brought up a really good point about picky eaters. And this is all about incorporating the family when it comes to meal planning. incorporating the family and having their input will alleviate some stress when it comes to, planning for your family and planning for the week. Always getting, kids, spouses, partners involved and asking them what's their favorite meal, what is your favorite fruit that you like to have on hand, and really having their input not only helps with picky eaters, because then for sure you're going to have something on hand for them to eat, but it also alleviates some of that stress for you when it comes to planning a meal or planning a week of meals. So whether that's putting up a calendar and each person gets to pick out a recipe for the week or for the month, as well as getting the family involved in the actual prep work. Maddie had suggested having the kids get the avocado out with the spoon so you don't have to get your hands messy. They can also pick leaves such as kale, lettuce, spinach. They can wash things depending on their age. They can peel and start learning how to chop. And this is a great way to also get them involved in the kitchen and start them learning healthy kitchen habits at an early age. So really introducing them not only to the meal prepping, but getting them involved in the meal planning as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all great points, Hannah. Okay, so going back to this, this is going to last me for quite a while. But quinoa, rice, farro, whatever you're using, definitely double cook that. So, you can use some for your quinoa burrito bowl, but you also have a couple of servings left over, so you kind of repurpose it throughout the week. That's definitely going to save you a lot of time, throughout the week when we're kind of rushing around with our, after work, after school, even during the work week, it's a little bit hectic. So just double cooking, your grains, your protein's really going to save you a lot of time in the long run throughout the week. Okay, so next up, we're going to start working on our sauce. So I went ahead and picked some cilantro leaves off, but I did just want to talk about this for a hot minute. So I went ahead and picked the leaves off the stem because the stem tends to be pretty bitter. So if you like that, feel free to go ahead and incorporate the stem, but I definitely don't really care for that bitter taste, so I'm just going to target the leaves here. And you can definitely mince this, chop this. You can have the kids come in and tear it for you to those smaller pieces. But I'm just giving it a few quick tears because I'm going to put this in my blender. And I know my blender is going to do a lot of that heavy work for me. So the blender is going to chop everything up. There we go. I got a new blender for Christmas, so I'm still learning its ways. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and plop the cilantro in here. The recipe calls for about 1/4 of a cup, but if you love cilantro, feel free to use more. If you're not a big cilantro person, you can use, a tablespoon too, or you can use something else, like parsley or whatever you have on hand. And I did forget to mention, you can use whatever herb you have on hand, spices, and any really ingredients with your burrito bowl is going to be fine. And that's, the beautiful thing about meal prepping. We're taking stock what's already in our kitchen and leveraging what we already have, right? So, if you don't like buck beans or you don't have it on hand, definitely swap it out for chickpeas or kidney beans. Instead of tomatoes, if you have a bell pepper that's about to go bad, feel free to throw that in there. That's why I really love meal prepping and this recipe in general, because it's really versatile. You definitely, mix and match and swap out anything that you need to make a meal work. Okay, so I am also using garlic. I particularly love garlic, so I'm using 3 cloves today. I'm popping it in my blender. If you have a food processor to make the sauce, great. If you don't have a blender or a food processor, that's totally fine. You're just gonna want to make sure that you're chopping up your herbs nicely, really mincing your garlic, and just giving it a good stir to mix it all up. But if you have a food processor, a blender, crock pot, instant pot, using these tools is really going to save you extra time in the kitchen. Okay, so now I'm going to work on my limes. So I am going to use my bear claw again and just kind of cut down the middle and squeeze the limes. Want to make sure we get enough juice in here. Actually, to make this a little bit easier for myself, I'm going to cut it again. So it's a little bit easier to squeeze and making sure I get a lot of juice in there. If you have kids at home, having them juice your limes would be fun to get them involved as well. Or, if you don't have a lot of time, the grocery stores will sell just lime juice good to go in a bottle. So, just thinking about your week and how much you want to spend time in the kitchen, thinking about your goals, and finding just kind of ways to make your life a little bit easier if you want to eat a little bit better, but just don't have the time to really spend hours in the kitchen. Using those techniques is really going to help you stay on track. Okay, so I'm going to squeeze this last little quarter here. And I have 2 limes. I'm going to go ahead and cut the other one.
Maddie, is it okay if you use bottled lime juice instead of whole limes?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can definitely use bottled lime juice. Again, that's going to save you a lot of time and heartache from trying to squeeze these limes out and a lot more juice. So if you really like the lime flavor, that might be a better option for you to just use the bottled lime juice so it's ready to go. And sometimes I feel like limes are either very juicy or I don't get a lot out of them.
Yeah.
So at least if the bottled lime juice, you know exactly how much you're getting.
And when it comes to meal prepping, it's whatever works for you and whatever makes it easier for you. Meal prepping is supposed to be easy and convenient for your lifestyle. So if that means using canned beans instead of dry beans, if that means using frozen broccoli instead of prepping broccoli and then cooking broccoli, fresh broccoli, if that means using the lime juice bottle instead of the whole limes, whatever works best for you. As long as we're making sure we're creating those balanced meals like this quinoa burrito bowl. So yeah, any of those shortcuts, just being mindful when we're using frozen or canned, we're always looking at that nutrition facts label, looking at that sodium content, making sure when we're buying frozen vegetables or fruits that it's not in a sauce, because in the sauce means it has a lot of added sodium, has a lot of added sugar, and can even have a added trans fat. So whatever works best for you to make meal planning work for your lifestyle and convenient for you.
Absolutely. Be anything fancy. Keep it simple. As long as you have your bases and it's a balanced meal, like Hannah mentioned, you're good to go. And what we mean by a balanced meal is, asking yourself, okay, do I have a source of protein? Yes. Do I have my grain? Sure do. Do I have a source of fiber? Yep. Specifically in this burrito bowl, we're going to get, our carb from our quinoa. It's also going to give us protein. We're getting protein from the chicken, and we're getting a lot of fiber from our beans, corn, and those other veggies in there. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, I have a jalapeno. I like my sauce a little bit spicy, but this is certainly something you can omit. Or if you don't have a jalapeno on hand and you have a bunch of spices you can use and leverage. Anyway, so I cut off the ends of my jalapeno, and as we can see, these seeds are in here. So I'm going to remove them because yes, I like it spicy, but I don't like it too super spicy. And that's where a lot of that heat comes from, is from the seeds. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove some of the seeds. So I just kind of have the skin here. And I'm just going to give it another rough chop. But again, my blender is going to do a lot of that fine mixing for me, so I don't really need to worry about cutting it up super finely. Okay, so now I'm going to use some Greek yogurt. I'm using Faye 2% brand, so that means it's 2% fat. And I'm going to add in about half of a cup here. So, you can use whatever yogurt you have on hand. Yogurt's just going to give our base of this sauce a nice creamy texture. And this yogurt's also going to give us protein. It's a good source of probiotics, which is that good gut bacteria. It's also a great source of calcium too. So, we definitely need enough calcium because it helps keeps our bones and our teeth nice and strong. It also helps with muscle contraction. So, if we have those fitness and workout goals in mind, definitely want to get enough calcium. And yogurt's going to get you there. And you don't have to use Greek yogurt either. I personally like Greek yogurt for that added protein. Yes. But, regular yogurt is fine. Or if you're dairy free or, vegan, using a plant-based yogurt, great. Just make sure it's not flavored and it's plain. So I've definitely put it vanilla yogurt into my savory dishes, and it did not complement each other well.
No, I don't think that would go well with this burrito bowl. A vanilla flavored burrito bowl.
Nope, it's not it. Okay, so cool. Next up, we are just adding a little bit of olive oil for, kind of like that liquid effect to make sure everything blends nice and smoothly. It does call for 6 tablespoons. So what I did is I went ahead and filled up 1/4 of a cup. That's about 4 tablespoons. Okay. So instead of, dump, about 6 tablespoons, you can definitely just fill up 1/4 of a cup. So that you're getting 4 tablespoons. And now I just have to measure out 2 tablespoons instead of 6 to get me there. So yeah, I mentioned monounsaturated fat earlier. That's, what we consider our healthy fat. This is great for our hearts. This dish in particular, because we're getting that monounsaturated fat from our olive oil and our avocado. So definitely want to try to incorporate olive oil when we can.
Yeah. And for meal planning, it's really a good idea to stock up on pantry items when they go on sale. So your healthy oils, when they're on sale, go ahead and stock those up. Any kind of grains, your brown rice, lentils, beans, chickpeas, things that are shelf stable when they go on sale, go ahead and make sure we're buying and stocking those so that when we are starting to meal prep and plan out our weekly meals, we can look in our pantry and see, oh, I have brown rice, I have whole wheat pasta, I have my healthy olive oils, I have some nuts and seeds that I can add to salads. And that way, meal prepping is not only, time saving because you have everything on hand, but it's also budget saving. That's another part of meal planning is it's really beneficial when it comes to our budget. So always stocking up on pantry items when they go on sale.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you might have seen me add a little bit of salt and pepper in there. I just did that for taste. Feel free to add whatever you want in. If you want salt, pepper, if you want to add garlic powder in there, or cayenne pepper, cumin, whatever you like, totally fine. I'm gonna go ahead and start blending this.
I'm gonna mute you.
I'm gonna mute, yeah.
All right, so while Maddie is blending our delicious cilantro lime sauce, I'm going to start talking a little bit about goals in the new year. It's, when the new year's comes around, that's when our New Year's resolutions happen and we set goals. A lot of times we're focusing goals on our health, whether it's nutrition or exercise. We also can set financial goals or mental health goals. But when we're making our goals, we really want to make sure that they are SMART goals. When I say SMART, it's an acronym to describe how we should be setting these goals. So they need to be small, measurable, achievable or attainable, realistic, and time bound. So what that means is when we want to set goals, we want to make sure that they're small. Oftentimes, the new year, we plan these huge, giant goals, and it's kind of that all or nothing kind of feel, where you're like, I'm going to stick to a healthy diet every single day for the rest of the year. And then the first day the first time you may fall off track, then you're like, oh, this is it. I can't do this anymore. So we really want to set small goals. Also, when we set small goals, it's easier to achieve those goals and then build on them. So instead of starting large, start small so that we can then build on those goals. The next is measurable. So this is choosing a goal that you can measure throughout your year, let's say, or throughout the week or throughout the month. So instead of saying, I want to eat better, it's I want to eat more fruits and vegetables each day, or I want to eat at least 3 fruits and vegetables each day. So really making it measurable, putting a number on that goal so that you can easily track it. The next is achievable or attainable. It has to fit into your lifestyle. It has to be something that you feel like you can sustain for your lifestyle. And that goes along with being realistic too. This is not an all or nothing for goals. Oftentimes we get into that mind frame. Like I said, once, you mess up once and then that's it. My goal is done. I can't accomplish it. That's not what SMART goals are. It's goals that we set that are attainable and realistic so that if we do, kind of jump off the bandwagon, it's easy to jump back on and get back on the right track. And the last is time bound. And this kind of goes with the measurable too. We want to set goals that we can track our progress. So instead of the generic goal, I want to eat healthy or I want to exercise more, it's I want to eat 3 fruits and vegetables every day for the next week. Or I want to meal prep 2 recipes every week for the next month. So really setting specific SMART goals that are realistic and attainable to your lifestyle. So really focus on creating those SMART goals.
Perfect. Yeah, all great tips. And meal prepping really complements those SMART goals well. Especially if you have a nutrition goal in mind. So maybe it's, I want to eat more protein, or, I want to eat those 3 to 4 servings of a fruit and vegetable a day. Planning ahead, meal prepping for those things, whether it be make a little extra chicken or, stocking up a little bit more in your canned goods so you can easily eat some more fruits and veggies. Totally fine. Meal prepping and planning ahead is going to keep you on track. Okay, so here is my sauce. It's nice and creamy, nice and green. We can see everything blended pretty well. So that is good to go. And I am going to store my sauce separately, and I suggest you do too, because when we mix the sauce all together with this large batch of food, it might get a little mushy. It's not going to stay fresh and as crisp. So definitely storing that sauce on the side is going to be great for this meal and this meal prep journey. And typically, you can double batch the sauce as well. It should stay pretty well in your fridge for about 4 to 5 days. So it'll last you through the whole work week, which is great. Okay, last but not least, I have my chicken here, and I'm going to attempt to shred it. You definitely don't have to shred your chicken. You can cut it into cubes, whatever, you prefer, totally fine. You can also use a rotisserie chicken to save you some time and save you from the step. If you're not using chicken, that's fine. If you're a vegan or vegetarian, know that you are getting, protein from your yogurt, even if it's plant-based. You're getting protein from your quinoa. Those beans as well are going to give you some protein. And you can also add things like tempeh or tofu. I think that would complement this dish pretty nicely as well. All right, so this chicken's a little tough, so I'm shredding the best as I can. Usually this method works pretty well, but I think I'm just going to leave mine in chunks for this recipe. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside, and I'm also going to store this protein separately from my meal as well, because again, I just want to make sure everything stays fresh and avoiding some food safety issues. Typically a rule of thumb, and Hannah, let me know if you disagree, but I would say proteins stay pretty well in the fridge for about 3 days after it's cooked. Do you agree?
Yeah, I would say probably 3 to 4. I'm one of those that I don't like to cook protein all that much. So as long as I can, make it work, I'll try to make it work. But yeah, typically 3 to 4, just keep in mind food safety when it comes to storing protein and whatnot. But yeah, I would agree.
Awesome. All right, so I'm good to go with my meal. Again, I went ahead and combined everything in here. But, if you are cooking for a family or, having some friends over and you kind of want to set it up as like a Chipotle, build your own burrito bowl style, keep those separate. And if you're meal planning this for the whole week, definitely separate those ingredients out. It's going to help it stay a little bit fresher for a little bit longer in your fridge. All right, that is that. I just want to touch upon a couple of points here since our cooking demo is done. Just going back to those goals. So we're a couple weeks into January now, and this could serve as a really good checkpoint to kind of reevaluate the goals we made on 1/1. So, we're going to ask ourselves kind of those questions that Hannah brought up too. Is this goal or goals realistic for me? Am I having a hard time, keeping up with it right now in this journey? Is this sustainable? Can I do this every day? this is a good checkpoint to kind of ask you those questions and make any tweaks or adjustments to your goal as needed. We're also going to revisit, why we made these goals in the first place. Why do we want to exercise more? Why are we trying to eat better? Usually, it's all good. It has a positive impact on us, but there's usually a deeper reason why we make these goals, right? So maybe, our cholesterol is a little bit high. We want to, promote our cardiovascular health. So we are going to walk 15 minutes before work. Or maybe our blood sugar is a little high and we're going to swap out, our soda for a LaCroix. Or maybe, you have a financial goal and has nothing to do with nutrition and fitness. And that's great. Maybe you, I'm going to budget, X amount a month. Perfect. We're going to think why. Maybe you want to buy a new car or, take your family on a well-deserved vacation to build memories with them. Digging a little bit deeper and kind of intrinsically reflecting on why we made those goals is going to help us stay on track. Yeah.
Thank you, Maddie. Are there any questions related to meal prepping, goal setting, or just your basic general nutrition that me or Maddie can help answer today? By the way, everyone's photos look so good. I'm literally starving. We were talking about what we would add to this recipe, and it got me so hungry.
What would everyone add? I'm curious.
We had some cucumbers, some pepper and onions. We've had some fruit that was suggested. It honestly sounds so good, and I cannot wait for lunch. But any other questions, you guys? Okay, nothing's in the chat. So I want to thank you guys so much. Jenna, thank you for hopping on and cooking along with us. Maddie, this looks fantastic. We really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to meet with us, talk with us, hang out with us, and cook with us.